Welcome. We'll get started shortly. Before we begin, here's how to earn continuing professional education credit for attending this session. There are no polling questions or attendance checks. Instead, you will demonstrate your knowledge by taking a brief multiple-choice quiz using the Earmark app. Visit earmark.app in your web browser. You can also download the mobile app by scanning the QR code on the screen. Log in, or if you're new, create your free account. Be sure to use a valid email address because that's where we'll send your course completion certificates. From the home screen, scroll down to find the course. You can also tap the magnifying glass icon to search for the course. Tap on the course artwork, then the Enroll button. On the Course tab, you'll find the recording and quiz questions. Complete the quiz to earn your CPE certificate. It takes us a few days to create the course on the app, so if you are attending this session live, please wait a few days. We'll email you a link to the course when it is ready. If you have questions or need help, email us at support@earmarkcpe.com. And now, on to the event.
Hi everyone, and a very warm welcome to you. We have an interesting 45 minutes to an hour ahead. We're talking about finders, minders, and grinders. I wonder how many of you have read about this concept. It is not original to Panalitix at all. It's a well-established business idea, and I'd like to share particularly today how this might impact those of you in the accounting industry. We have talked some housekeeping, by the way, thanks to the Earmark team, thanks to Zach for helping us to set this up. And I'm going to then get into a little bit of theory. Sometimes it's useful to have as a grounding or as a background the theory of a topic that we're going to talk about. But don't worry, we will get onto some practical applications of this theory, which you may be able to use in your accounting business and apply to create a more fun, a more profitable, a growing type of environment, whatever environment suits you. And then I will share a couple of resources towards the end of this presentation. So thank you again for being here. I know it's a busy time of year, and I appreciate the fact that you're spending some time with us. You may not be familiar with Panalitix or with me, so I'll spend a moment here mentioning that we have a very long history working in the accounting industry. Well, that feels like a long history, around 20 years working exclusively with accountants, and we're fortunate to serve clients mostly in North America, but also in Northern Europe, Sweden, Finland, and the United Kingdom. And then we originated in Australia, where we have a number of clients, and our neighbor across the Tasman Sea in New Zealand as well. We offer group coaching services to our clients. We offer one-to-one coaching, and we offer short courses, but we're also quite proud of our Learning Hub. This is a digital community which provides a lot of resources, activities, courses, and so on that accountants can access to improve their businesses. And a lot of that is available for free. So please consider trying that if you haven't already. And what do we talk to our clients about? Well, there's mainly 4 themes at a very high level. The first is to create more capacity, because with more capacity, you can get a lot more done with your existing team and for your clients. Some of you will be more focused on growth through better branding, lead generation, sales, business development, and so on. Some of you will be thinking, I've got a great business here, but I'd like to reduce dependence on one or a couple of people, maybe the founders of the business. And that may be a precursor to your exit, because every business will go through some kind of exit event, the transition of ownership either to internal people or maybe external people, maybe even private equity investors. So those are some of the themes that we speak to our clients about. Creating capacity is really what we're talking about today, because we're going to discuss how we can make best use of the people that we work with, how we can organize them, how we can put them in roles where they play to their strengths. Because if we do that, we're likely to provide them with a better experience and our clients with a better experience too. And a quick word on me. I'm not a founder of Panalitix, but I am an entrepreneur, originally an attorney. And I took some businesses I grew some businesses and then exited those to third-party buyers in the past. And I got involved with Panalitix about 4 or 5 years ago. And I'm thoroughly enjoying working with accountants and learning from accountants, because it's a fascinating industry which is rapidly evolving. So that's a quick background on Panalitix and myself. Let me start with some very non-controversial comments about people and personalities here. And we're getting into the theory section of our presentation today. And I don't think anyone would dispute that people are known to have personalities. We're all a little bit different, aren't we? Think of the people in your family, the people that you work with. And that difference is that we tend to behave differently depending on the situation. In fact, you might be able to name someone who's outgoing or loud or positive, reserved, serious, kind, and so on. These are some of the attributes or personality types that we tend to encounter. And, you know, for every one of those, there's probably an opposite. You may know someone who's outgoing, but you may also think of someone as more reserved or quiet. Someone might be positive or, of course, negative, pessimistic, serious or rather trivial, or organized or less organized. So each of these have an opposite. And one thing to remember is personality is not the same as skills, because you can be highly skilled, let's say in tax planning or double entry bookkeeping. You're highly skilled in that, but it doesn't necessarily, you may have a personality that's outgoing or not outgoing. So we're not talking about skills here. Now, it is possible that we can act contrary to our personality, what our natural inclination is. This is very possible. We may have to do this from time to time. I'm sure everyone here wants to say some things sometimes, but you're just not going to say those because it's not the time, it's not appropriate, it's not what you feel is right at that time. But if we do this, if we act contrary to our natural inclination, our personality, it takes quite a lot of effort. We have to think about it. We have to deliberately act or not act in a particular way. And that is tiring, and it's probably not something we can keep up, certainly forever, but not for extended periods of time. And if we believe that, we're likely to conclude that we will succeed as people, but also in our workplace and for our employer, if we are doing something which kind of matches our natural personality. Doesn't that make sense? Think of a sporting analogy here. I'm not as familiar with the US sports, but someone who's going to be a pitcher in baseball, they're going to succeed more if that is their natural inclination, if they have a tendency to be good at and enjoy that kind of activity. If they're doing something different, they're less likely to succeed for themselves or for their team. And this applies very much in the workplace. And we often refer to this idea as if we're playing to our strengths, we have a good chance of success for ourselves and our employers. So if we agree with all of that, then understanding personalities is helpful. We should think about ourselves and where we have natural inclination, but also about our team members, the people that we collaborate with. Now, I'm not saying this is something that you use exclusively as you build teams, as you recruit people, as you train people, as you inspire people. I'm saying this is supplementary to the other information you have. You have someone's resume, you have testimonials or references about that person, you have your own observations, you have what they tell you. That's all valuable information. But in addition, if we can understand a little about their personalities or their natural inclinations, as well as their skill sets, we have a better chance of succeeding with people. So let's now bring this back to accounting and think for a second, what is it that accountants really do? Well, they do a lot of things. There's a lot of exciting things we can do in accounting, but at the core of it is we take client data, mostly financial data, often in some kind of cloud application. We get access to that and we organize it. And in some cases, we add value to it. The audience for the reorganized financial data might be the regulator who wants to see it in a certain form, perhaps like in a tax return, or it may be the client themselves who wants to see the organized data in a set of financial reports so that they can do something and make sensible business decisions based on that information that we've organized for them. So that is basically at the core of what accounting businesses do. They organize and add value to client financial data. So what kind of attributes do we need in our organization if we're going to succeed with this kind of business? Well, I'm going to argue that, of course, we absolutely need those with technical skills. And here we're talking about accounting, compliance, bookkeeping, tax type of skills. People in our businesses need these kind of skills if they are going to succeed. They need to understand the language of that financial data and the rules or paradigms by which we will reorganize that financial data, because if they understand those well, they will be able to do their work accurately and also efficiently and on time, which is what our clients tell us they want, right? They want accuracy and they want things done when they expect it to be done. Now, just to be clear, we have many, many levels of technical skills. You might be an early career bookkeeper. You've got 1 or 2 years of bookkeeping experience. That's a technical skill. On the other hand, you might be a 20-year veteran of the accounting industry with a unique set of skills in terms of complex tax problems or transfer pricing agreements with the United States and another country, or something highly unique and sophisticated. But at the end of the day, we're talking about technical skills, the ability to organize financial data and add value to it in interesting ways. Now, what we're going to talk about today, these people who exhibit technical skills in abundance, they have fun using these technical skills. They enjoy applying them in various situations. We are going to refer to as grinders. Again, this is not my word. This is, by the way, I've done a lot of reading and research on this. And if anyone wants to see some of the background reading here, I'd be happy to share it. But for today's purposes, we're referring to this incredibly important and talented group as grinders. But here's the thing. If we put more than one grinder in a room or in a business and we ask them to accomplish that kind of work that we described a moment ago, they, like any group of people, will need a degree of management. They will need systems, processes, some sort of plan, and some sort of measurement or metrics which will help them to stay on track. This is human nature. It's not unique to accounting. It's as soon as you get a group of people together, they need direction or supervision or guidance if they are to do their work accurately on time. Specifically, in accounting, let's think about, we have a tax season coming up. We might have 500 clients that need tax returns done. We might have 5 people. So we need to understand our capacity. Do we have the capacity to do the work in-house, or might we have to go outside, or should we not take on all of those clients because we don't have the capacity? Maybe we have abundant capacity, too much capacity, in which case we want to increase how many clients we can serve. We then may want to allocate those work. Is it as simple as saying, well, we've got 500 clients and 5 people, let's give them each 100? Well, it's not, because the different technical skills of our team should apply into the different jobs which require different levels of skill. There could also be scheduling of this work to do. Not all of it has to be done, let's say, by April 15th. If we can get work out earlier, that'll take the burden off the deadline. Some of your team might be not available at certain times, and some of your clients will require the work to be done by a certain time. Some of your clients won't get you the data, which means that we cannot do the work. So this is a question of scheduling. And then we can build systems or workflow processes which help us to complete our work. We can do this according to a plan, and we can measure our success. We can track whether we are indeed getting things done as we apply. So this is the work of a manager or a minder who just loves the problem or the challenge that I've just described, the opportunity to have people focused and working successfully together in the best interest of the clients and the organization and themselves. They offer training, they offer internal communication, daily meetings, weekly meetings if necessary, to keep people on track and so on. I'm a great fan of those with managerial skills because I think they're absolutely critical. Now, if we stop there, we would have the beginnings of quite an interesting accounting business. But what's missing? Well, what's missing are those who just love to speak with and build relationships with our clients, not just our clients, but our prospective clients, people who may be considering working with us. Now, these people who we're terming finders today, they have an interesting set of interpersonal and communication skills. They love to ask questions of people. They listen carefully. They're empathetic. They share their own experience and they build relationships. They're also pretty good problem solvers. You probably have had an unhappy client at some point, and you want someone with these interpersonal skills to go and calm things down and create some kind of solution which will take us to the next phase. So it is our experience working with accountants, and it is the experience of many people who have written authoritatively on this topic, that these finders, minders, and grinders create a brilliant blend or cocktail, if you like, for particularly a professional services businesses and an accounting business. And I think it's very helpful if we consider how we are adhering to this kind of model, and we'll get further into that now. Here are some of the challenges with the theory. Here is obviously humans themselves are complex. They are nuanced. They behave in ways which are unpredictable. And these human traits that we're talking about here are not that easy to define. Keep in mind, we're using the language, we're using language as the medium for explaining what we're talking about. So when you say something like, that's a very outgoing person, what do we really mean by that? What does outgoing mean? It might mean different things to different people. So we have to keep in mind that language is not the best tool. And in spite of that, experts in this field, again, I'm happy to share some of their learnings and their analysis with you if you're interested. They have defined certain attributes or traits which are strongly correlated with those who are good at finding, minding, or grinding. In other words, if you tend to be good at grinding, you will exhibit some certain behaviors or traits as a normal part of your personality or behavior. And that's where they've done a lot of study. And we sometimes express these traits or these attributes on a continuum. And we try to explain the degree of correlation or association with finding, minding, and grinding. And that's what we're going to get into now. And I'd like you to think about some of your team members or indeed yourself as we run through this next section. What we're talking about here are the sample profiles of finders, minders, and grinders, because I would like to think in your firm, not only do you have people who exhibit the skills of finders, minders, and grinders, but they're in roles which actually play to those strengths. Remember, we talked about the importance of that earlier. So let's do a quick exercise, and please think about people in your business or indeed yourself as we run through this. We're going to talk about some attributes, and this comes from the science that sits behind finders, minders, grinders. It's very well researched. We'll talk about the high end, in other words, the strong correlation with the attribute, and the low end. And to start, I'd like you to think about what attributes you would like to have in an accountant, someone who's going to do 100 of those tax returns that we discussed before. They need to be diligent, for one thing. And in this case, it means they follow the rules, they're dependable, they're prudent, they simply get the work done. They don't want distractions. They want the systems and the processes. They want the data. They want the tools, and they will then diligently go about the business. The opposite of this is those who take shortcuts. They don't necessarily finish jobs. They want to try new ways of doing things in spite of the fact that there is an established system. This is not a skill that we would look for perhaps in our grinders who are going to do the work. We want them to be diligent and follow the existing rules and sensible. We also like people with a high degree of organization or orderliness. They apply the standards that are set in the rules, and they discipline themselves to follow those. That's the opposite from those who are disorganized and who say, well, do I really have to do it that way? Why should I do it that way? Let me be a bit flexible. Surely there's other ways of doing these things. Remember, we're trying to get those tax returns done, and we need the focus. And Patience here refers to the idea that if we follow the rules, things will probably end up in the right place. So therefore, let's just be patient, composed, tolerant of what's happening around us, because we are going to adhere to the rules, the standards, the processes, the systems in place, and things will happen. And that's very different from the person who's constantly a little bit distracted, is easily inconvenienced, wants to find quick fixes for the work that they're doing. That's not what we want in the people who are going to complete those tax returns. And interestingly, we have found in our research that the grinder profile seems to be highly associative, and that what that means is that they're comfortable in a team environment. There is the assumption that everyone has a role, and that if they fulfill their roles, good things will happen. They appreciate the order of having people in teams and then doing their part in the team, because good things will happen. This is different from the person who says, you know what, I think I can figure this out on my own. In fact, why don't I just do this myself? I don't really need to wait for other people to get their work done. I'll just take care of this myself. This is not the attribute we want for someone who's going to succeed with those tax returns. Now, what I'm describing here are very strong attributes which correlate very high with that word of grinding, the role of grinding in organizations. So that's great. I wonder if you would agree with me thinking about the people that you've worked with in this particular role. What about our managers? And what's really interesting is that they also exhibit a relatively high degree, but not as high as grinders in these particular roles: diligence, organization, patience, and being associative. But they also need to exhibit some other skills. And think about diplomacy, the ability to communicate in a thoughtful or sensitive way, thinking before speaking, deliberating what you want to say, versus being blunt, direct, forthright, and simply blurting out what it is that's on your mind. That is probably not the best way for a manager to go about their business. So we tend to see high correlation with diplomacy, and closely related to that is warmth. Think about people you know who seem to exhibit a genuine interest in the people they work with. They're engaged with them. They take the time to understand and empathize with people's situations, versus saying, I don't really need to do that. I can be distant. I don't really want to show any interest in where you're at with your life. What we need to do here is get some work done. That probably is not going to be a good long-term or warm approach to subordinates that the person is managing. So we see a high correlation there. This resilience is interesting. And going back to that tax season we're talking about with our 500 returns, it would be great if everything went exactly to plan. The fact is, however, that it probably won't go exactly to plan. So the resilience exhibited by this manager is really important, because when things don't go to plan, they should be consistent, they should be good under pressure, and not fragile or highly stressed under pressure. So we have some additional attributes there which define our minders or managers. Now, what about our finders? We talked about their interpersonal skills and communication skills. And interestingly, they also need a high degree of diplomacy, warmth, and resilience. Makes sense, right? Because whilst they are communicating externally with our clients and so on, they still need to show that empathy, that resilience, and that warmth. But they need some additional skills too. And these are really interesting, I find. So the ability to have confidence in a social environment. You know, I often see accountants at conferences and so on, and there are those that are just delighted to be at the conference. There's nothing better. They can walk across the room, meet someone that they've never met before, and quickly forge a conversation and strike up a relationship. If that's you, you are probably bold, you initiate contact, and you have a high degree of social confidence, versus those who really avoid social situations and don't like a sense of not knowing exactly what's going on. And a related concept is the boldness which comes with being comfortable with conflict. Imagine if you are negotiating price on a deal, your willingness to take charge and confront your client and say, listen, we really need to raise fees here, and here's why. And if they say, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that, you're prepared to make your case, versus someone who wants to avoid conflict at any point in time. And a related idea is these people embrace change. Yeah, that's the way we've done it in the past, but let's look at a new way of doing this. I know that we've served you as a client by doing it in a certain way, but let's look at new ways, fresh ways of doing that. So that's the ability to embrace change versus resistance to change. We need to do it this way because there's a system and we've always done it that way. So let's stick to that. And self-confidence, there are people that if you asked in your organization, are you on a pathway to success? Some will quickly answer, absolutely. I'm going to be successful. I expect to be successful. Yes, there will be challenges, but I'm going to hit my goals that I've intended to meet. And others will say, well, I'm not really sure about that. I'm not sure I'm performing well enough. I've got such a lot of work to do and training to do. So these people will tend to be more self-critical. So finally, here we find that our finders tend to exhibit high degrees of imagination, improvisation. They're willing to not only try new things, but design and create new things as they look into the future, versus saying, I've got everything I need now, and I just need to follow the system as it exists. So there are some attributes of finders which we find have a very high correlation to success in that field. I can complete this chart. The idea of trusting others and intellectual confidence, these were two other attributes which we identified, but they didn't correlate strongly with any of these grinders, minders, or finders attributes. So if we build out this map, we can start to see in the light blue those attributes which are associated highly with the grinders. I've been through those, and the minders and finders. And I think this is a very good basis for you to think about the people you work with, and indeed how you work, where you exhibit strong attributes and whether you're in a role which is suited to that. But let's get into some more specific application. We're done with the theory now, and I thank you for your patience as we went through that. Let's look more at how we could apply this idea in our businesses. And I want to start with what I feel is one of the most important tools in any business, actually, but certainly in an accounting business, and that is the organizational chart. And I find myself arguing this with accountants often, who actually often don't feel it's that important. An organizational chart, I feel, should be in place even if you are a solo practitioner with no employees, because it's not so much what role you're in, but it's where there are gaps and how you are going to fill those gaps in the future. And so an organizational chart is very important. Let me give you one example, and this is a real example of a client that we work with, and it's a relatively small firm. So the organizational chart is relatively simple, but let's take a look at this. And I want to show you some application of finders, minders, and grinders in this. So we have the founder of the business here. He is positioned as a managing director, or a CEO is what he calls himself. Panalitix is an advisor to the CEO. So think of this like a board or an advisory board. So every business should have a leader, no matter how big the business is. Now, he also runs what he has in the business, what's called a production team. That's what we call it. And this would be the factory. If we were making widgets, or if we were a manufacturer, we would have a production team. And at the core of that production team are, they're grinders. So he's got 4 people with technical skills. Some are more junior, a bookkeeper and an accountant, but then he's worked for a couple of years now. One of these senior accountants used to be an accountant, but has graduated to a more senior role, working on more complex clients. So this is the production team of grinders that do a lot of work in this business. remember we said that because we have multiple grinders, we want to supervise and make sure they have enough work to do and that they're doing the work on time and they have systems and processes and training and internal communication and support for doing their work, which is why he has appointed a production manager. This production manager was a senior accountant, but has exhibited considerable skills in all of those things we talked about: capacity planning, allocating the work, scheduling the work. So she is now responsible for managing this group, which is great for the owner because he used to do that job, but he does other things in the business now. And one of the former senior accountants showed those skills that we talked about earlier, which are the finding skills. And we call them the team leader or the senior client manager. They have the skills of the finder, and their job is really to run this entire group, but also to interact with the clients. So they know how much money this group can generate, because remember, we are running a business here and we need to think about how much revenue we're bringing in. The client manager knows the costs associated so that they can calculate a gross profit, and they know who the A-list clients are, the B-list and the C-list clients. They know where there are additional opportunities in the client list and what they should be doing to pursue those additional opportunities. And so this person is less involved in the production of work and much more involved in client relationship management, whilst the production manager is creating efficiencies within the producers. So you start to have this finder, minder, and grinder role in this production team. Now, to support the production team and take away anything which might be a distraction for them, we have an office manager, and reporting to the office manager is a client service coordinator who also supports the production team with admin roles, getting data from the clients, ensuring engagement letters are sent and signed, and invoicing and some banking, accounts receivable, accounts payable, etc. So we have a team which is designed to take anything away from the production team which might distract them, anything that's of an admin nature. And because this business owner and founder is growth-minded, he puts himself in the position of a business development manager. So whereas the client manager is looking at existing clients and trying to maximize the value of existing clients, the business development manager, who is the same person as the CEO, is involved in bringing on new clients. So there's some marketing, some lead generation, some business development through events, and he's working on some new products for the firm as well. And he's assisted by someone who does the social media management and the website management and the newsletter and so on. So this is not a bad organizational structure. We work hard with clients to try and get people into roles which make sense. And this is a rapidly growing firm where you will start to see the beginnings of a second production group being founded here. So we will appoint another client manager here, and we'll start to create a group which replicates this group, because it's our finding that there's a finite amount of work that any one of these groups can take on. Roughly about $1 million of fees is what we feel a group can take on before we start another group. And the thing we like about this structure is we don't need more partners. We don't need to make the top of the organization more top heavy in order to grow. What we need is well-run, efficient groups who can execute the production work for the clients and measure their success. Now, I said that this can be about career opportunities. So when we look at an org chart like this, there could be some very obvious things. I already mentioned that this senior accountant used to be an accountant, and they've graduated, they get better clients, they get more training, and they get more compensation as well. So if you're an accountant or a bookkeeper, you might be thinking, I want to rise to the role where my boss is. Perhaps that's going to be in the second group that we will establish in due course. We also might have someone that is exhibiting skills in, let's say, finding. So this senior accountant is doing exactly that. They're quite young, 27 years old, I believe, and they love to go out and see the clients. They love to have lunches with the clients. They like to ask questions. They like to think about the long-term goals of the clients, listen very carefully to what the client is concerned about, challenges and opportunities. And we're likely to appoint this person or to have them fulfill a role, maybe as an assistant client manager for a while, until they can assume the role of senior client manager. And if we start that second group, they may be the person who steps into that senior client manager role. And they're very excited about this direction. You know, many accountants are struggling not only to hire people, but also to retain people. So if you can start showing people career direction like this, then we will be able to retain them better. And interestingly, the owner, who's a very smart and growth-minded person, is thinking this CEO role is not a role he has to be in. He actually has much more fun in this business development role. So he's likely at some point to appoint the client manager into the CEO role so he can focus more on growth-minded activities. He can still sit on the advisory board to influence how the business is run. After all, it is his business, but he is more intent on playing to his strengths than he is having the top designation in the business, which is a very mature and sensible way to go about business. And what's really interesting is this client service coordinator, who's a young admin person with, frankly, very limited qualifications. She has said, you know, I'd love to get some qualification in bookkeeping and maybe start my career less on a client-facing side or a managerial side, but maybe there's a role in grinding which I can assume. So we can start to see how there are career pathways for people, and I believe that accountants who do a good job of demonstrating career pathways have a really good chance of retaining people in their organizations. And we could go on. The marketing sales assistant might aspire to be more of a business developer, and so on. So think about that in your organization. What does your org chart look like exactly? Do you have places for finders, minders, grinders? And how are your people configured now? And what are their opportunities? Because it's not just about now, it's where they're going to be in a year, in 2 years, or even in 5 years in your organization. So the organizational chart built on finders, minders, grinders is a great tool for career development. Now, the next thing is, I stress, in Panalitix, we help accounting businesses. We even call them businesses. We don't like to call them firms or partnerships, because we feel that if we apply the principles of business, we will get the best outcomes for clients, for the team, and for the owners. So what does that mean? It means we should think about productivity, to some extent growth, if that's your agenda, and that will result in profit as well. So let's take a look at what this means. And I'm going to use some data here from a firm we work closely with, and I'm going to drill into that production team that we talked about before. You'll see certain positions. You'll see that those people have certain skills, experience, and roles. Of course, some will be finders, some minders, and some grinders. So remember, the senior client manager is that person who has finding skills. That's the communication skills. They like to talk to clients. They often have a background in grinding or minding, but their interpersonal skills are so developed that we're comfortable with them focusing on our A and maybe our B class clients to build those relationships, improve retention, and look for upselling opportunities. So we have them in a role. And remember, I said we may have someone who aspires to do that. And if we find that person, we really want to give them the opportunity to flex those muscles or use those skills. So this is a less experienced person. And what better way to put them in a role of looking after C-class clients? So their job is to ensure retention, upselling, and maybe getting referrals from those clients. They also have a background in grinding in this case. And then we've got the minder, or the senior production manager, who's going to quality control the work. They're going to allocate, capacity plan, provide processes, systems, internal communication, training, and so on. They have a good experience in grinding themselves. They need to know the substance of the work, but they're also good in that minding role. And then we have our grinders. So a senior accountant with up to 8 years experience in that role, another with a similar amount of experience, an intermediate accountant with less experience in grinding, and another intermediate accountant with less experience as well. So we've now got our production team, the finding, which is the client relationship management, the minding, which is supervising the grinders, and then, of course, the highly important technical skills exhibited by those grinders. In Panalitix, we often advocate the establishment of offshore teams because it's difficult to find people onshore and bring them into your organizations, but it's also there may be cost leverage and skills leverage which we can achieve there. So in this particular case, and it doesn't matter that they're onshore or offshore, but we have the finders onshore. That makes sense because they need to interact with the clients, and those interpersonal skills are more likely to be found in someone who works and lives and is culturally attuned to onshore activity. But in this case, we have the entire minding and grinding team located offshore. So the minder is, this is in India, is located there, and they supervise the grinders and work closely with the finders, but they are located offshore. Now, at this point, remember, we're running a business, right? We are very business minded. So we'd like to understand the costs of these people to the organization. And these are figures as of July 2024, I should say. And so we have the compensation costs here, the senior client manager being the most expensive. And we have these people, one of them is a part-time worker, but they are working offshore. The minder is a highly responsible role, and they're working offshore. So we can start to look at our investment in resources in order to complete the work that we need to do. We can also measure productivity, and this is defined as the amount of time spent by these people, which is billable to clients. And what's interesting here is we want our grinders to be highly productive. We sometimes see 90% here. We sometimes see 70 or 75%. If that's the case, we want to ask our minder the question as to why our grinders are not hitting a productivity of around 80 or 85%, because that's our expectation. Remember, we have cleared away the distractions, not only those operational distractions, but also the distractions of having to interact closely with clients, because we have dedicated people for those roles now. Chasing clients for data, that is not their role. We have the client service coordinator. So why wouldn't you be spending all of your time on productive work? And we have support for them to do that. Maybe there isn't enough work. That's one reason we might see low productivity, but we're determined to see high productivity of 85% or more. Now, with our minder, we fully respect that minding is a real job which takes time, energy, and focus. So we expect to see less than 85%. In fact, I would argue that this is a little on the high side. If although the production team is working well, so I'm happy that this productivity is around 70%, but sometimes I'd be happy for it to be 50% if that means making sure the production team is working very well. And then we have our finders, and it's absolutely critical that we give them the space. Remember, this is a growth-minded firm, an ambitious firm that wants to break way beyond the $1 million barrier and get to $2 million, $3 million, $4 million. So the role of the finder to build those relationships to ensure retention, referrals, upselling opportunities, and high levels of client satisfaction is absolutely critical. We want them to take a long-term view of that. So we're very tolerant of the fact that their productivity is relatively low. And we can translate that productivity into fees. You'll tend to find that the more experienced people obviously can work on more valuable work. And so the fixed fees that apply will tend to yield much more than some of the work that the younger and the less experienced offshore team is doing. So even though we're less sensitive about what these numbers are, so long as these people are doing jobs in their particular roles. If we aggregate this data now in a business sense into a financial summary for this group, here's what it looks like. We have just over $1 million of revenue that this production team is producing. Our cost of goods sold, which is really the compensation costs, is around 383, which gives us a gross profit of close to $700,000 or 65%. We often think our clients can achieve 70, even 75% here. We may look at ways to optimize this. And so the role of the senior client manager would be to think about how to optimize that. Maybe there's more the minder can do. Maybe we are not charging enough for some of our work, etc. So we can now diagnose how we can increase gross profit. But we're broadly satisfied that people are playing to their strengths. They're in roles which make sense and they're complementing one another. The opposite of this is that everyone's kind of doing everything that they need to do whenever it comes up. They are reactive to the situation, and that's not the ingredient for good long-term business building. So I hope there's something there that's helpful as in your approach. Now, recruitment is a major challenge for accountants. It's a lack of people that want to enter the profession. They tend to be priced at rates that don't make sense, given what accountants tend to charge, which is generally too little. So if we can equip ourselves better in terms of hiring, by showing that org chart and showing that we value putting people in roles that suit them, and describing what those roles are in the form of detailed job descriptions, we can also evaluate people. And we have a ton of information in our Learning Hub related to how you can interview better and recruit better through better questions to establish where people's natural inclinations are, finders, minders, or grinders. And then we can help them plan their careers. Remember the org chart we showed. Everyone in your organization is thinking, yeah, but where am I going to be a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now? At least the people who are probably your best producers or the most valuable to your firm, they're thinking that. They're thinking, what does this look like in a year or 3 years? So we can do some serious career planning. And of course, as managers in a business, we also need to give people short-term goals. That could be the next 3 months. What are we going to train you on? How are you going to succeed to get your productivity up to 85%? How are you going to get better at collaboration? And how are we going to reward you? Rewards is a big subject, which is not the topic of today's discussion, but incentivizing people to succeed in those roles. If we go back to the prior chart, we can start to design incentivization plans, which might get people motivated. It's our experience that it's often less about the money and sharing the revenue or the profit, and it's more about professional development opportunities and so on. So how can we equip people so that they will succeed in their roles and have more fun in their roles and so on? And final idea on how this applies is really self-reflection. When we work through this with accountants, including accounting leaders who have been in the business, in the industry for sometimes 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, they sometimes there's this epiphany where they say, well, you know, actually, when you talk finders, minders, and grinders, I do all of that. And I've been doing it for 30 years. But what I really like doing in the business is one of those things. And I wish I could do more of that, because that's where I have most fun. That's where I succeed the most. That's where when I'm happiest to be around, and so on and so forth. So business is important. It's what we do to make a livelihood, but I don't think we should ever be in a position where we are disliking a large portion of our work or our role. And I'm not naive as an entrepreneur myself. I know that small organizations require us to do things which may not play to our strengths from time to time, but that's not an excuse for not putting ourselves in roles where we will mostly play to our strengths. So we work with people to reflect and analyze that situation in more detail. Let me finish up, and I'm grateful for your patience here. Please come to our future events. We'll continue to work with Mark, and we have our own events that we do. our webinars. We cover a range of topics. I would encourage you to sign up for our Learning Hub. There is a free program. There's also a program with some supervision. Let me just briefly show you how this looks. We have our information arranged into 5 areas here. Today, we're talking a lot about team development. We're talking about designing the organization. And what you'll find here are resources, courses, tools, which relate to many of the things that we've talked about. A lot of this is video enabled, so you can, depending on how you learn, some people like to read, some people like to watch videos. We've talked a lot today about management, which breaks down into leadership, productivity, compensation, and so on. There's literally hundreds of templates in here. We talked about, for example, interview questions, which you would find in the recruitment section. You'll find hundreds of templates which can support you as managers, policies, training templates, templates for internal communication and performance reviews, how to onboard employees, anything that makes your organization more successful and equips you as managers to get what you need out of your organization. So that's what we've talked about today. But the vision, strategy, goals, plans, we talk about in Business Foundations, workflow, managing clients and finding new opportunities with our clients, branding, communication. There's literally thousands of things here. If you can't find it, search for it. Here's the search box. And if you still can't find it, or go straight to our AI enabled clone, where you can put in any question here. And in the same way that ChatGPT gives you an answer, you will get an answer with citations. And those citations will refer to Panalitix materials. So by the way, most of this, the resources section is all free. Some of the tools you have to pay a small subscription for. So please consider using this. It's a good thing maybe to have over the holidays for those of you who are doing some long-term planning and professional development. We also offer mentoring programs. These are our coaching programs, which are group. We have a lot of fun in our groups. We do fun things like axe throwing and go-karting and archery and other things. But of course, we do some work as well, all designed to optimize firms in the ways that I discussed before. We sometimes work individually with firms or do particular projects. So if this is a time for you to consider expanding or improving your business to get what you want, please get in touch with us. At some point, you can contact me here on Mark Ferris at Panalitix, or Kim, who will also respond very quickly to any ideas or comments or thoughts you have. But there you have it, my friends, on finders, minders, and grinders, the different roles, the attributes of people. Please think about what that means in your organization. Try to put people in roles that will make sense to you, and then run your business like a business, because that's where you'll get the best outcomes for yourselves as owners, for your clients, but also for your team members. I thank you very much for joining us today at Panalitix, and thank you again to Mark for setting this up. I will close up now and wish you a brilliant day. Thanks again for watching. Goodbye.
Today's event has ended. To earn CPE, go to earmark.app or scan the QR code on the screen. Then log in or create your free account. Search for the course by tapping on the magnifying glass icon on the home screen and then entering the name of this event. It takes a few days to make the course, so if you're attending this event live, keep an eye out for an email letting you know when the course is available. Pass the quiz to earn your CPE, then tap the button to email yourself a certificate. Stay tuned for more events from Earmark. Thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you again soon.